How do you define poverty?
I would define poverty as not having the means to provide for yourself or your family the necessities to live on a daily basis.
People living without essential things you need. I guess food, water, maybe shelter, clothing.
When someone doesn't have enough money to buy basics like shelter, food, clothing, etc.
I would define poverty in an absolute sense of not having enough money to meet your daily needs. And in those needs I would include food, clothing, and shelter, but I'd also include medical care.
It's very difficult for somebody to get the basic needs of life, like shelter, food.
Defining poverty by thinking about it in terms of people's inabilities to be able to meet their basic needs, or to really struggle to meet their basic needs.
Do you think poverty has a direct effect on education?
Who are poor do not have the means to get a good education quite often, that in this country in particular there is an inequality in education and the programs that are offered, the quality of the schools, the quality of the teachers, and unfortunately kids who do not live in wealthy school districts are shortchanged by our education system, which doesn't really offer equal opportunity to everyone. We have an ideology that education is the great equalizer and can offer opportunity to everyone regardless of their background to succeed. Yet, if you go to a high school that doesn't have good facilities, that doesn't offer AP courses, that doesn't support students equally, then it's not really equalizing opportunity.
Yes, I think poverty does have a direct effect on education. I also think education has a direct effect on poverty. People that are educated are able to provide for themselves. They're able to get jobs, they're able to work. And if you don't have that education, then you're not going to be able to find a job that will help sustain you.
I definitely say it does in the United States because education is funded by property taxes. So if there's a low-income area, the education may not be as high a quality as an area with a higher income tax bracket, kind of perpetuating a lower quality of education simply because there's not enough money to fund the system.
Because if you don't have enough money to pay for things like books, then you don't know the most updated material that is out there.
I think that people who are living in poverty, they have a chance to get a great education and maybe live a better life, but it's harder for them to because the situation they're living in, they're zoned for bad schools because everyone at the school is living in poverty. Therefore, they can't, half of them don't finish high school. They don't have the money for college, so they usually stay in the same socioeconomic level. And then if you do have a really good education, you're not guaranteed to be wealthy. There's a possibility that you're going to live in poverty.
I wouldn't say a direct effect just because the public school system lets pretty much anyone get in, I guess just as long as you pay taxes. But I think if somebody's willing to learn, their place in society shouldn't really affect that.
I certainly think that education can be empowering, but I think there are also ways in which, for impoverished populations, there are ways in which education can, in some respects, seem less relevant.
How important is education to countries with a high poverty rate?
I'd say it's very important, because with education comes progress and reform, and since we're in a technological world now, education's pretty important. And I think for maybe a government to help its people come out of poverty, and for those people to come out of poverty, the jobs provided and the money made by having an education would probably lift people out of poverty.
With an education, they're capable of acquiring skills that they can provide to each other for services, so therefore they can make money and prosper and maybe become less poor.
In developing countries, I think it's necessary to, I think it's a little bit different circumstance because they're more considered being in the manufacturing sector than the service sector, and the availability of jobs is maybe more dependent upon skills than knowledge of Voltaire or something.
Poverty, absolutely. All of the statistics show a negative relationship between education and poverty. The higher your education, the less likely you'll be poor.
I think that people who are higher educated have a better chance of earning more money in their future, and therefore will have less likely entering into poverty.
I think that education is highly important to countries with low poverty or high poverty rates. I think that education is one of the ways that people can better themselves.
I think it can be empowering for lots of people to be educated, and that's one of the reasons in many systems why education is denied or is made difficult for many people to be able to access is that it can be empowering, and many people in many systems don't want significant portions of their population to be empowered in those kinds of ways.
I think it should be a very, very important issue. In order to forward the country, they need to better educate their citizens so they can be contenders in the local marketplace.
Based on enrollment data, about 72 million children of primary school age in the developing world were not in school in 2005. 57% of them were girls, and these were regarded as optimistic numbers.
As seen in this graph, the level of poverty decreased with the amount of accessible schooling to children in Africa.
Child survival rates jump 40% if girls are educated for 5 years.
This graph represents the amount of children enrolled in secondary schools. There is a 32% difference between industrialized countries in Eastern and Southern Africa. In the world, only about 60% attend secondary schools.
Nearly 1 billion people entered the 21st century unable to read a book or sign their names.
Although there has been some progress in the proportions of children of primary school age actually receiving and completing primary education, some 101 million children worldwide are still denied this right. Not surprisingly, most of these children live in developing countries.
With a sizable rural student population, high poverty, substantial challenges, and outcomes that are among the worst in the nation, South Carolina ranks as the 7th rural education priority state.
More than 1/3 of all South Carolina public schools are located in rural areas. More than half of all rural students qualify for subsidized meals, and almost half of the entering 9th graders earn a high school diploma in 4 years.
71% of young children whose parents do not have a high school degree live in poor families.
29% of young children whose parents have a high school degree but no college education live in poor families. 13% of young children whose parents have some college or more live in poor families.